Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. First, let me thank Vijay sir and Balram sir for having faith in what I can do in psychology. This talk is going to be purely from the exam point of view. However, why psychology as a subject was added in QCI or YCB, it's purely to understand or know the significance of why psychology is important. So if you look at, we have been studying Chitta, almost 20, if you look at only Patanjali Yoga Sutra, 20 places, the word Chitta is used. At the same time, there are two places where the word mind is come, especially in Sutra 1.35 and 2.53. So it's very important to understand mind and subtleness of Chitta, everything. So that's the reason when one goes and examines Patanjali, they say Patanjali is like an Ayurveda physician, he's a psychologist and he's a grammarian. So, without wasting much time, let's get into the chapters. For YCB, we have 3.6 to 3.10. These are the five major topics on psychology. For convenience sake, I'll be clubbing 9 and 10 together and taking 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8 now. Wherever you feel you need to ask, either you can ask today or you can note down your points and come and ask tomorrow again before we start the class. So uh, I'm sure many of you know that syllabus. It is starting from 3.6 to 3.10. The starting is introduction to psychology. Uh, okay, just to understand, whenever we study something, it is very important because psychology, unlike other subjects, there are occasions where they say psychology is an inexact science. It is not an exact science, but it is an inexact science. The moment you understand it in totality, you will know the difference between why it is known as an inexact science and why it is known as an exact science. So, psychology, like a science, discover and explain the underlying laws and principles of human behavior. Understand this carefully. Human behavior, because all other things are very innate, deep inside, which is very difficult to understand. The outcome of something we will definitely know, which is through your behavior. Psychology describes the law of learning, feeling, and thinking. So remember again what we learn, what we feel, and how we think. Like any other science, psychology collects the subject matter or facts of behavior. Why again and again behavior comes, I will let you know the moment we get into the third slide. Psychology is a positive science, not a normative science, because it gives you clear direction and indication in terms of what behavior, what reason for a behavior to happen. The one of the first psychologists, Wundt, was one who said that let us measure the human behavior accurately. So Wundt studies, we don't have it as a part of the syllabus. However, for convenience sake, I'm telling you the other major psychologist which one should know. The moment you say Western psychology, I've studied, I've appeared for QCI, you have passed. But more important is that over and above, when you start going into more and more deeper, we cannot ignore the Western psychology at all. So the major psychologists, Sigmund Freud, Carl Rogers, Maslow, Watson, Pavlov, and others. The word psychology, yes, very important. Psych and logy. And psych is typically what they meant is the soul. And logos means any study, any rational discourses, like a tarka. So people said, even today, when you discuss somebody about soul or spiritualism, immediately there is an argument. Thousands of years before or hundreds of years before also, they thought any discussion on the logos is purely a constructive discussion about how effectively people are thinking, what they're thinking, why they are thinking. Therefore, we say psychology is a study of a soul. This was an earlier definition. There were various definitions for given by psychology and study of mind, consciousness. Now, I will tell you exactly why this change happened in the third slide. One of the famous person, see, if you look at the origin of psychology, the first psychology work came in Aristotle. And I'm sure many of you know who is Aristotle. The Greek philosophy started with Socrates, who actually did not have any academy. He used to be known as the walking philosopher who used to walk to the uh, marketplace and ask people, who are you? Why do you exist? What is this universe? Why people are suffering? Why this illness? Why the death? So he was considered to be the first philosopher, Socrates. The second philosopher was Plato, and the third most famous philosopher was Aristotle. So philosophy was the subject which studied everything, whether it is science, whether it is history, archaeology. So there were only one subject which was known as philosophy. From there, the first work came by Aristotle, which was on a book called De Anima. So that time, psychology was a part of the philosophy. Very interesting. I just put it in a joking manner. Later stage, people became scientific. So people said, what is the soul? Today also people ask, what is the soul? Where is it? You don't talk about all that. So the modern psychology decided we will get the change. Soul was replaced by mind. Now mind, today, if you ask anybody, where is the mind? What is the mind? You will again land up into more problems. So the 19th century people said, let's replace mind with consciousness. Reason being, lot of neuropsychology, neuroscientists came, neurologists came, neurophysicians came, neurosurgeon came and said, I will operate the brain and I'll show you. You get into the brain and find out, show me where is the mind. So mind was not part of the body system. Mind was not part in the brain, in the central nervous system. So they said, we'll talk about consciousness. Then again, the question was consciousness. Where is consciousness? Finally, they said, let us understand consciousness or whatever or mind from the behavior, because behavior is something explicit. One can see. So the real change came, as jokingly William James said, psychology first lost its soul, then it lost its mind, and finally it lost its consciousness. The second aspect of what we are studying in the syllabus is behavioral psychology. Now, since we have left the soul, we have left the mind, we have left the consciousness, we will be focusing more on the behavioral part. Behavioral psychology, again, very common sense. What is the behavior which we show when we are having a stimuli? Somebody says something, our behavior will be different. When we think about something, behavior will be different. So the study of behavior was actually what psychology focused on. The biological approach believes us to be a consequences of our genetics. Now, behavior is what? Is it something which nature has brought in, or nurture, parenting, schooling, genetics? So behavior is a very, very wide term which has a lot of things to do. So a lot of other psychology, social psychology, general psychology, abnormal psychology, all the psychology, evolutionary psychology merged to understand what is behavior. And one of the major person whom we will be studying is Sigmund Freud. And it's purely for our syllabus also. He was the first psychologist in the late 17th century and 18th century who was the person who was instrumental for the psychodynamic approach to psychology. Little bit about Freud so that you will not forget him. He was actually a neurologist. He was a medical doctor, but he did a lot of work onto, and he saw patients coming with certain symptoms which are not in the brain. Why a person behaves like this, people do not know. Psychologists did not know, neurologists did not know. So he was more interested in understanding the past life and hypnosis and all those things. So from keeping his base philosophy of neuro, he moved more into the psychology and many approaches which are not part of our syllabus. The three major approaches are: earlier psychologists used to sit on a chair and listen to patients. It was known as armchair method. Then they moved into a second method, which is more of, this will not help. We need to understand more and more in terms of the behavior, family background, social upbringing, job, other things. So then the approaches differed. And now again, we are talking about concept of human psyche, which is again part of our syllabus. Generally, psyche is term of the mind. Okay. Now we will not think from the mind from our Patanjali's point of view at this moment, but later whoever is interested can understand, where Patanjali has given clear instruction that what is the part of chitta which is part of the mind. So they say mind, when it fluctuates from past and present, it is chitta. So mind per se is mind. So that lot of distinctions are there in Patanjali, even though right now our topic is not that. So Freud was a person who did a lot of work on this, and Freud's most important human psyche, he brought psyche under personality, and he brought it under three different parts of the personality, and said the psyche which you are talking about, the mind which we are talking about is always, let for easy or convenience sake, let us divide it into three parts. So that is what we will be now seeing. He said, for people to understand clearly, he said, let's look at mind from three angles: the id, the ego, and the superego. Now, very, very clear. Now, what is id? Whatever comes to our mind, which we feel that at this moment I cannot show, repressed, socially unacceptable things, all the things which may not get real respect or unacceptability from society, goes and hides in your id. Id can lead everybody to danger. It can make us get into anything: lust, greed, anger, whatever one can call it, because there is no control. It is just a more of a, not even you cannot call animal, it is a wild instinct. The second level is the ego. Now what ego does? Ego is exactly what all of us keep working on, and this ego is not from the ahankara at this point of view. This ego is actually whatever our culture, upbringing, the way our childhood, our education, that will try to stop the id by telling, no, I am educated, I'm living in a society, I have to value human beings, I cannot get into anything which is socially not acceptable. So ego, very important. Day in and day out, even when we come to study, we are actually, fulfilling our ego level. We are knowing how to behave in society, how to, what norms to be followed, all those kind of things. The third level, yes, as more and more one gets into yoga, one gets into spiritualism, one gets into a lot of learning, we rise up to a very high level where we have something called superego. Superego, for simple understanding, is nothing but morality. It will guide you. It will tell you what is right, wrong. It's typical. I'll give you an example. When somebody sees a 500 rupee note on the road, in today's times, we'll say 2000 rupees. Then the id will say, pick it up. Nobody will see. The ego will say, no, it doesn't belong to me. Then ego is always under threat from id. Id will tell, अरे आजकल ऐसा है, सब लोग करते, nobody is watching, you do it. Ego is in trouble now. The super ego comes there to help ego and says, no, I had also lost money and somebody else came and gave it to me. I was in such a nice feeling when I had that money because I was really requiring that money. Somebody else could do it, make me happy. So it is my responsibility. It's all morality, values, virtues come at the super ego to really bring a wonderful life for us. So just to understand human psyche, for Freud, the division is id, ego, superego. Anybody wants to ask anything on this part? I can continue. Sanjay. Sanjay,
Yes, I don't think it's a clear. You can continue.
your voice is
Not from
cracking.
my side.
Sanjay, your voice is cracking.
Not from my side. You can continue.
Hemjit, he is in a remote place, so
Ah,
you can continue, Hemjit.
okay, okay. So just to show now how this happens. This is a world famous model. Okay, this is known as the uh, iceberg model. Now, how this all these three things remain in our system: the conscious mind, the pre-conscious mind, and the unconscious mind. Just see what is in the unconscious mind. The major part of our thought process continuously is unconscious mind. So many things are happening there, and that tries to push things to the conscious mind and the pre-conscious mind. So at each level, the id is full of things which are actually coming from the unconscious mind. Our wild desires, our animal instincts, all of it. Because if you go back and check, we were all quadrupeds. We were all walking on four legs or two hands and two legs till evolution brought us. So those things are genetically predisposed to a large extent. That is why today suddenly you will find somebody in a fight go into a rage and start torturing or killing or brutally assassinating somebody, which is not somebody a human being could think of. So these are all deeply inside our system. So unconscious mind, very, very important to understand, because it's a major part of what is happening when we behave. Whereas the conscious mind is always aware, and preconscious mind actually comes in between both. And it is very important that conscious mind and preconscious mind work together to understand this better. Now, as I said earlier, in id, all sexual energy, aggressive, destructive, all the vices which are there are embedded. All things which are not socially acceptable are there in the id level. Whereas in the ego, it's a reality principle. Yes, in a social being, I'm staying in a society, I need to be very clear. And the super ego is actually the one which makes a society better. It will make your society feel that I respect, I need to be very, very important to be in the society, my contribution is important, I need to value people, then people will value, and we will have a wonderful society. So what is an healthy psyche? Id is there, unconscious mind. Ego says, yes, I'm in charge. Super ego says, okay, but wherever you falter, I am there to come back to you and help you out. Just to recap, id, we have seen a reservoir of unconscious psychic energy trying to satisfy the basic needs, very, very not even basic, below the basic needs. Ego, yes, we have seen the executive part, which helps us to perform day to day, operationally, go meet people. And the super ego, the judgment, consequence. We always will be worried in the super ego that, yes, what if we do something which will affect others? Okay. Now we will go to the next part, which is conscious level. Conscious level relates to the awareness of an individual. Very well, no doubt about it. When we say we are conscious about things, it is like we are aware. For simple things, just remember the word aware. What we are aware? We are aware about our thoughts, feelings, and sensation. We should be aware about what other people's thought, feelings, and sensation. So consciousness is a sense organ of attention. However, the most important thing, it is only 1/9 of the total mind. Many a time we are caught unaware. We are either here nor there. Our presence of mind in an situation is very bad. We are actually living in the past or living in the future. So very difficult to be very judgmental and being in the present. That is why all our systems, all our philosophy says be in the present, be aware, understand. It is concerned, yes, with thoughts, feelings, and sensation. Person becomes conscious of perceptual stimuli from outside world within the organizer. So more and more meditation, all those things will make you more and more aware. Only element in pre-conscious enters consciousness. It is one-way traffic to our unconscious mind. That's not very important for us to know at this moment. Now, pre-conscious is described as that part of the mind in which ideas and reactions are stored. Very important. Sometimes what happens, that right time it does not come out. So it is very important to understand the pre-conscious state. Many a time we react, we don't respond. Many a time we talk and think. When your pre-conscious mind is very, very strong, you will only think and talk. You will not react, you will respond. So it's a very important thing to understand the pre-conscious level. Most of the pre-conscious level things, with exercise, with memory, with reading, with all the kind of swadhyaya which you say, has to move into the conscious level. Otherwise, the chances of it going down to the unconscious level is very high. So why it is told that you have to be continuously studying, reflecting, Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, all those concepts. So whatever we know, we come across, we are getting an opportunity to practice it at the conscious level. Otherwise, it will go back and there is no point. It will go to unconscious mind and it will not come at the time when we really want it. Now, unconscious mind, see the percentage. It is 9 out of 10. It is hidden part of the iceberg. See the power of unconscious mind. See the power of mind, which is not in our body. It is not in our brain, coming and talking to us from morning till evening. That is the power of this unconscious mind. It can take you for a ride. It can put anything under you. So all our study, why this is related to yoga, because you will find all answers for these questions at yoga, with all the ashtanga. You will find when you go into Siam level, you will have answers for all these things, not questions. You will have answers for all these things. So unconscious mind, it takes a major part of your brain. Maximum thought processes are coming from unconscious mind. Very important to know that. Now, one more part of our syllabus is uh, the cognitive process. So cognitive process is nothing but our process of knowing, attending. Just imagine, cognition means knowing, attending, remembering, reason. So what is required? You need to be, when you say I am cognizing of the fact, means I am aware of the fact. How this awareness comes? When you are attending, when you are remembering, and when you are reasoning. So cognition has very important things. When you hear something, you are thinking. When you are knowing something, you are thinking. You are remembering and you are communicating accordingly. So cognition is again coming as a part of our exam. What all it takes? The cognition takes care of what all aspects? It takes care of the human intelligence, language, what we speak, perception, what we see, attention, where we stop, we listen and we understand, the memory, and thinking and problem solving. Now, many positive psychology, all those things have come from this cognition, and there is a lot of relationship. There are a lot of yoga teachers trying to do a lot of work in this positive psychology. For example, Pratipaksha Bhavanam. I'm sure everybody knows, Vitarka Badane, Pratipaksha Bhavanam. Every thought comes. Do you think the thought has to take it in the right, or you have to look at the counterpart of a thought? So in cognition is very important. If one person thinks to do anything on positive psychology and yoga in future. So the origin of cognitives, again, Aristotle, because everything came from philosophy. Any thought comes to us, how do we classify is the origin? They said, anything comes to us, how do we allow ourselves to group? Very important. In today, when somebody talks to us, we immediately believe, right? We don't ask. Even if there is somebody comes and tells one gossip, immediately we will listen. We don't ask how, when, where can it happen? Are there chances it will not happen? Something has happened to somebody, and majority of time we assume that something has happened to somebody, then it can happen to me. So cognition is one of the very important part in psychology. The origin is what, Aristotle was one person. Descartes, there's a lot of study on relationship between mind and body. Descartes and the yoga has a lot of close relationship. There are a lot of people in India who has done a lot of yoga work on Descartes to see, what he said, cogito ergo sum. He says, I exist because I think. Whereas later philosophers said, I think, that is why I exist. So one has lot, one can read a lot of things in that, the mind-body interplay in Descartes. However, it is not part of the syllabus at this moment. The other philosopher was John Locke. He wanted to understand exactly. Psychology's question is everything learned, everything taught, or many things are caught? Today, there is always a dilemma when we try to do parenting. Children learn what we teach, what they are taught, or they learn from what they have caught. So these are people who did a lot of work on perception, and perception purely can be deception or reality. Always understand perception as two dimension. One is whether it is a reality or it's an illusion. The other one is, if it is a reality, does it have any fallacy? And other people like Ebbinghaus, how information. So cognition is nothing but how you analyze your thoughts, feelings, and your understanding about information. Uh, Next is the last part of the cognition. Uh, Cognition, just for understanding, it's a definition form, because you will learn it in a definition form. That's why I try to simplify. Cognition is a mental processing that includes attention of working, memory, comprehending, and producing language. So it's very simple words. You get to know something. How do you put it in language? How do you put it in your thoughts? How do you convey? How do you handle it? That's all cognition is. Okay, cognition psychologists argue that individuals do not passively respond to stimuli. They don't simply accept it, but actively process information in the brain before responding to the information. That's all. What is there from outside, how do we handle it inside? Last part of cognitive psychology focuses on how people think, understand, and know. Very simple definition. It is nothing great. Cognition is nothing but whatever people are thinking, understanding, and knowing. And why it is important? Because psychologists were studying all about behavior. So they wanted to know what people think, what they understand, and what they know. Emphasis on learning how people comprehend, represent the world around them. Focus on conscious thinking. Again, remember that word. They are talking about outward, overt behavior, not something which is covered. Emphasis on individuals' active construction of understanding. What all involves, just for recapping, cognitive process involves knowing, thinking, reasoning, memory, remembering, problem solving, judging, decision making, language, understanding, comprehending, usage. So this framework, if you understand, actually you will understand psychology totally. That much it is important to understand what does cognition means. All what behavior does, when it knows something, when it thinks, when it reasons, when it remembers, when it memorizes, when it problem solving, judging, decision making, all of it. I think on 3.06, the other part is on human nature. Okay. Human nature is a concept that there are set of logical characteristics. Very important to understand the definition, including ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. So when we talk about somebody's nature, we generally use that word in our normal, colloquial language. When we talk, hey, this person's nature is good. When we say nature is good, what we mean by it? The way he thinks, the way he feels, and he acts towards us. That's the sum quality of all of it is human nature. Keep these definitions in mind. So anytime anything anybody is asking you, your understanding of psychology at the fundamental level should be very strong. I'm talking about fundamental level. The ways of thinking, acting, and reacting that are common to most or all human beings, so that they are learned in social institutions. Okay. Uh, Motives. I think motives or motivations are again part of the first section. Motives are very simple too. And the two motives will have two internal aspects. One is the biological motives. They are also known as physiological. Okay, what we require, eating, food, drinking, all those physiological motives, because body triggers those mechanisms. They are typically, causes of all the neurotransmitters. For example, somebody is hungry, the body will create a kind of mechanism which will make the person say that now I require food. So in that, all your neurons, your neurotransmitters, your brain structure, your hypothalamus, your limbic systems, etc., everything will take care of these aspects. Purely what? Hunger, thirst, sex motive, the basic, very, very basic things. The psychosocial motives. Now comes the higher level. Psychosocial is nothing but psychological and social motives environmental factors. Now we are living in a society. The other one is when our basic needs are met. Now we are living in a society where we want knowledge, we want people to self-respect us. We will try to achieve knowledge, information, and many a time we want to feel ourselves that we are recognized, we are respected, our self-esteem. So on the psychological side, it is more on the self-esteem which is coming. Now every motive, this is something which I have added extra. Every motive will have both intrinsic and extrinsic. Now, what is extrinsic? Extrinsic, which is outward, that everybody should recognize me, respect me. When I go to a party, people should feel like coming and talking to me. People should feel that, yes, he's a nice person. All of it are there. The other one is what? The other one is very, very extrinsic. Okay. Uh, Once again, I'm just, I got mixed up. Intrinsic motivation is deep inside me. Recognition, respecting, love. People should love me. People should respect me. People should come and talk to me. The other one is purely bahar ka. What we feel people should respect, give me rewards. I should get incentives. I should get promotions. I don't want any criticism. I don't want any, punishment, failure. So both our motives, which are psychological and behavioral, biological and psychological, as two dimensions. One is deep inside us, which is intrinsic, and one is external, which is extrinsic. Now, motivation is again part of our syllabus. Okay, there are different ways one gets motivated. The one of the famous model, which is what everybody knows and everybody's, I'm sure many of you would have gone through, is the Maslow's model, which talks about our basic needs. The basic needs are what? Again, we saw that physiological needs, roti, kapada, makan, all those things when we talk about. Then comes, our safety and security. Then comes what we discussed. People should accept me. People should respect me. I should be, well recognized. From there, the next level of motive is the esteem needs. Now, having said that, I have earned money. What else I do? I need to get my name and fame. So I need to move out from my basic needs. My house is there. So I need to be in a level where I should be recognized in the society. You'll find people getting into social service. So from there, the next level. So Maslow can be asked anytime, maybe in the exam also, the 5 model: physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness, esteem needs, and self-actualization. Self-actualization is a level where you will find people like Ratan Tata, people like Narayana Murthy. They have achieved everything. Now it is their time to give back to the society much, much bigger. So they will write off their wealth. They will go all out to give their everything what they have, because they have reached a very high level. And all these levels, you cannot expect somebody from down level to go up to the high level, which is very rare. So this is about Maslow. And remember this 5: physiological, safety, belongingness, esteem, needs, and self. This should be remembered. This model may not be important for us at this stage, which is David McClellan model. Okay, this is again one of the world famous model in motivation, just like what we saw Maslow. They say anything which you do, you need for achievement, you need for power, and need for affiliation. So what happened whenever we do something, we do it for achieving something. The moment, for example, you complete QCI level, now you will become, I want to be a teacher, known as a trained teacher and a facilitator. Higher level, you go further and further. You will have people like Vijay sir saying that, let me give back to the group. Let me conduct every 2 weeks one seminar. Let me make more and more people achieve what I have achieved. So there, what happens is that one is going, selfless. So this is also a very famous model. Just for understanding, even though this doesn't come under psychology section, but in personality, it comes under. At later stage, when you have personalities, all your test and assessment, everything for defining personality is there. in syllabus, but not here. So I thought I'll just take you through Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist, known for his work. He is the person who divided personality into 16 models based on extrovert and introvert. And this is one of the widely accepted tests in clinical setting as well as organization setting, even in India. So anybody goes to a psychologist and all, they generally administer such test to understand what is the person thinking, acting, feeling, and why is he thinking. Very, very world famous test. And this also, again, going back to cognitive, it also talks about nothing but thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. This may not be, I am just covering 3 psychologists just for a few minutes. Alfred Adler, again, when you want to study personality, you need to know Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and Alfred Adler. All these 3 people have done all of it. For example, in the whole of parenting, what happens to the elder son? Elder son is always supportive. So elder son always ensures that the other brothers and sisters are all given everything. But what psychologist says, elder son being the first son, all decisions were taken by the father and the mother. So the elder son, when he comes to workplace, decision for him, he will always go and ask. So elder son has strength, but the weakness also. He will always be looking at, how do I take, because he was always given attention by the parents. So Alfred Adler is one person who has done fantastic work, and one cannot ignore him if one wants to know about personality and inferior complex. They say sibling rivalry. In a house, 2 children come. The second son always feels the first one was getting attention. Now, when the second one is small, the first one starts feeling every attention is given. Theory of inferiority, the neurosis, psychosis, all those things. When if you are interested in studying, all of it starts from here. And very nicely said that only normal people are the ones you don't know very well. All other people, the moment you know them very well, you'll feel something is wrong with everybody. So I think this is up to here. We have in the first 2 sections 3.6 part of the syllabus, and after that it is on emotions.